I would like to go over some fundamental concepts of web development that you should be familiar with. In the HTML web page, we have three layers. We have the HTML layer, which defines the structure and the markup. That is where the content is placed. We have the CSS layer that defines the presentation, how the page looks, where things are. We also have a JavaScript layer, which defines the behavior, how the page acts when the user does something, or when the page loads. These are what are called client-sided languages. So we have these three languages or technologies that are used in the web page and are interpreted by the browser. So the browser is referred to as the client, and these are the client-sided languages that we use. You do not need to be connected to the internet or to place your files on a web server to use these three languages. All you need is a browser. When you're creating your HTML or CSS or even JavaScript files, you should be aware that some web servers where you will eventually be placing your files are case sensitive. I recommend that you always use lowercase file names to avoid problems. You will commonly see the HTML document with a .html extension. However, the .htm extension is also valid. You do not want to put spaces inside your file names or folder names, nor do you want to put special characters inside your file names or folder names. Your file and folder names should always be short and meaningful, and should you wish to use several words, you want to develop your own style with hyphens, underscores, or different types of prefixes. Index.html is commonly used as the default name for the home page, meaning on the web server it will load that file first if there is no other default file there. In every folder you should have a default file such as index.html. In the HTML language, we have two-sided elements and one-sided elements which are called empty. Two-sided elements contain content or other HTML elements. They will have an opening and closing tag. You might hear the term non-replaced elements. That means they're not going to be replaced by anything. They are just going to enclose the content that you put there, such as what we see here in this paragraph tag. And you do want to remember that it is preferred to always use lowercase with your HTML. We also have what are called empty elements, and these are our one-sided elements. They don't have any kind of text content. However, they do provide some kind of a directive to the browser to display something. There is only an opening tag. There is not a closing tag, and they are replaced by something on the web. You might hear them referred to as a void element. Notice that I have two styles of writing our one-sided or empty elements here. For a while, we were using the XHTML syntax where a / was placed to the right of the element name to self-terminate that tag. That is no longer required in HTML5. That is no longer the standard in HTML5, and I do not recommend using that. HTML elements are referred to as block elements or inline elements. Most of the elements that you will be working with are block elements. The inline elements are essentially phrase elements that describe the text, such as em, strong, and form elements are all inline also. Block elements always start on a new line. You cannot place two block elements together on the same line unless you're using some kind of CSS. Also, there is some kind of spacing on the top and the bottom of every block element, and technically that is a margin, and that can be adjusted using CSS. An inline element goes with the flow of the content. There is no break with respect to any types of margins. You will usually see the parent-child relationship with most inline elements. HTML attributes. Some elements have attributes. Attributes are instructions that modify an element. The attribute is placed in the opening tag only in the event that it's a two-sided element, such as the A element. Attribute values can be enclosed in a single quote, double quotes, or no quotes at all. Some elements may have more than one attribute. However, there are only a handful of HTML elements outside of the form elements that do have attributes. You probably will not be working that much with attributes unless it's with forms. In HTML5, we want to emphasize semantic markup. The word semantic means meaning. You want to choose an element that provides some kind of a meaningful description of the content, such as, is it a header section? Is it a heading? Is it a paragraph? Is it a list? So you want to choose elements that give the document structure. You don't want to choose an HTML element because of how it's going to make the content look on the page. Elements are not used for presentation. That's the job of CSS. You want to choose the element that give the document some kind of meaningful structure. Syntax. You'll hear me use the word syntax throughout my classes. Syntax refers to the rules for how things are displayed, or how you type the code. Every language has syntax. In HTML, the arrangement of the tags, attributes, value, brackets, slashes. Which tags have attributes, which don't, which CSS elements have properties, the CSS values that belong to properties, the orders in which elements go. These are all parts of what we mean by syntax. Here we see a basic HTML document structure. We see the doc type HTML. Notice there is no 5 after that HTML. The browser knows it's HTML5. We have the opening and closing HTML elements. We have the lang attribute in the HTML tag set to EN for English. This is used for accessibility. Screen readers can read your code to a visually impaired person. This is telling them to read the code in English. It is not telling the browser to display your text in English. The HTML document consists of 2 sections, the head section and the body section. All of the content in HTML tags go in the body. Header sections go in the body. Footer sections go in the body. They do not go outside the body. They all go inside the body. That is the way HTML documents are structured. In the head section, we have meta tags, the title tags, style sheets, JavaScript. The title element is very important because it's used in search engine optimization. Some of the newer HTML5 semantic elements that we have, header sections, nav sections, the section, article, aside, footer. These have some kind of meaning to structure our document as opposed to just using a generic div or paragraph for everything. When the browser reads your HTML document, it will ignore more than one character of white space. It ignores carriage returns, tabs, elements it doesn't recognize that are not part of the language. It will ignore them. It will also ignore anything inside an HTML comment. In the HTML document, we have a parent-child sibling relationship based on how the elements are structured inside the body. There are several ways to find problems or to verify that your styles are being applied correctly, that your layout is correct in the HTML document. The first is to use the CSS outline property that will enable you to actually see where your elements are. We also have the browser inspect tool. You can right-click on any area of content in the browser and you will see what styles are being applied to that. You also want to use validators. Validators can be very useful in pointing out errors to help you understand why your styles or why your layout is not acting as you expect it to. So here is an example of applying the CSS outline property, so we can actually see where things are. And this is an example of using the Browser Inspect tool. Here we have the W3C validators, and all you have to do is Google for them. We also have accessibility validators. You want to make sure that your web pages are accessible. There is a plugin that you can install on Chrome to test your pages also.